I've seen every Planet of the Apes movie, and this is exactly what you need to know and why you should care about it. If you see this and you're thinking, the movie with all the monkeys, that ain't for me, hold on. They're really good. I like them a lot. Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes is coming out. It's actually the 10th Planet of the Apes movie, but you don't need to be overwhelmed. It's not all one continuous story. Kingdom was actually going to take place 300 years after the events of the last movie, so in all honesty, I think you could probably go in without any prior knowledge and be okay. I can't say for sure because I haven't seen it yet, but there is some context and some prior knowledge that would really increase your enjoyment of the movies. Planet of the Apes is cyclical, kind of like a snake eating its own tail. It's filled with reoccurring themes, characters, storylines that are always presented in a different way in different iterations of the story. The stories can exist on their own, but there's an extra layer of depth if you know what to look for. So we start off with the original series. There were 5 movies made in the late 60s and in the 70s. You have Planet of the Apes, Beneath the Planet of the Apes. That's gonna be a tongue twister. Escape from the Planet of the Apes, Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, and Battle for the Planet of the Apes. Now these movies do represent one continuous timeline, kind of. It's a little messy, but they're technically all connected. Then in 2001, we had Tim Burton trying to remake the first movie, or maybe consider it a different adaptation of the novel that it's based on. This is the one that's a one-off. It's unrelated to anything else, and I would only recommend watching it if you really want to see people in ape suits jumping a lot. So I am going to go in a little bit more depth on those stories and what exactly has led to this. But just remember as we go, Planet of the Apes is cyclical. So to understand how that all works, we have to go back where it started. The original movie, Planet of the Apes, 1968. To really understand this movie, it's going to help to have a little bit of context of what was going on at the time. So some things that were happening at the time and leading up to when the movie came out, the civil rights movement, you had the Vietnam War, you had kind of a debate about science versus religion, particularly in public schools, like would the theory of evolution be taught over creationism. We had the Second Red Scare, also known as McCarthyism. It was just a really tense time in society, particularly American culture. There was this feeling that there was something poisonous, something was just really wrong with humanity. So here we come to Rod Serling, who wrote the initial drafts of the Planet of the Apes movie. He's famous for creating the Twilight Zone. He was writing science fiction in the time of the Hays Code, which is a precursor to the current rating system, PG-13R, except for it was a lot more strict. To get around the censors and to talk about the topics that Serling wanted to talk about, he would use science fiction. So he created 30 drafts of that original Planet of the Apes script and came up with the film's iconic ending. Why is any of this important? It's because good science fiction acts as a mirror. As humans, we have a distorted perspective because we only have one perspective, which is our own. Science fiction pulls this little magic trick where it wraps the familiar in something unfamiliar and then provides you with an alternate perspective. So now I'm going to get into talking about the actual details of the movie. I really would rather not spoil them, especially if you've been able to make it this long without knowing the twist ending of the original movie, but I can't really talk about the franchise without spoiling it. Back to the original series, starting in 1968, Planet of the Apes. This is about a group of astronauts that are exploring in deep space. 320 light years from Earth, they land on an unknown planet where society is flip-flopped, and the dominant intelligent species is apes, and humans are like dumb animals. They're mute, they don't have a civilization of any kind. Only one of the astronauts survives. His name is Taylor, played by the famous Charlton Heston. He gains the sympathies of a few of the ape scientists named Zira and Cornelius, who help Taylor eventually escape the ape society. And Taylor brings with him a human woman that he's grown to like. Her name is Nova. After he and Nova have escaped ape society, they're riding a horse on the beach when they come across the film's iconic ending and imagery. It's the Statue of Liberty buried in sand, which means they're not on some unknown planet. They've been on Earth the whole time. During space travel, instead of traveling 320 light years from Earth, they traveled into the future instead. And Taylor has now discovered that humans destroyed themselves through nuclear warfare, and that's why the apes were able to take their place.
You maniacs! You blew it up! Damn you all to hell!
Beneath the Planet of the Apes is about a second astronaut that lands on the planet, which again is just Earth in the future. He doesn't find Taylor, but he does find Nova, and together they discover a subterranean colony of humans, mutated humans, because they're worshipping a buried ancient atomic bomb. This group of humans comes into conflict with the Society of Apes, and the whole movie ends with the bomb being detonated. The Planet of the Apes as we know it is essentially destroyed. But Zira and Cornelius, the ape scientists that helped Taylor, manage to escape the planet before the nuclear explosion. They go find one of the human spaceships and take off. And due to some crazy space science, they travel back in time to 1970s Earth. Crazy thing is, Zira is pregnant. And when they land on Earth, they've got a little baby named Milo. The US government is terrified of these intelligent apes, mostly because they're being honest about what the future's like. And humanity's like, oh, we're gonna destroy ourselves. But instead of just maybe not doing nuclear warfare, they just want to kill the apes instead. Really sad, by the end of the movie, they succeed. Zira, Cornelius, and Milo are all killed by US operatives. But turns out, baby Milo was swapped out with just a normal monkey. The real Milo is now being raised by a circus owner, and the movie ends with Milo starting to talk. Which leads us to Conquest of the Planet of the Apes. Milo is now an adult, and the circus owner that's raised him has renamed him Caesar. The apes are intelligent, so they're not just pets, they're acting as servants. So Caesar, the intelligent ape, is coming up and seeing all his fellow apes mistreated and being used as a labor force. So what does he do? He leads a revolution of apes against humans, and by the end of the movie, he essentially succeeds. Which then leads us to the final movie in the original series, Battle for the Planet of the Apes, which tells the story of Caesar trying to create a joint society where humans and apes can live together, but it doesn't go super well. By the end of the movie, he more or less succeeds, even though he faces like an internal rebellion and human battalions. But we find out that the story is being told in the future by an ape teaching a class of humans and apes together, both human and ape students. And then the last shot of the movie is a zoom in on a statue of Caesar, which sheds a tear. And fans are divided on whether or not that means that Caesar's happy that he achieved a society where they can live together, or sad because the racial strife still exists and Planet of the Apes is just going to repeat itself. Which then leads us to the reboot series, which a lot of people thought might be a sort of prequel, kind of showing how an ape society might rise up and replace humans, but it really is a different iteration of the story, because in this one, which started with Rise of the Planet of the Apes, Caesar is not a child of Zira and Cornelius, time-traveling apes. No, he's born when a big pharmaceutical company is performing experiments on apes, trying to find a cure for Alzheimer's. So again, we come back to how like themes and storylines are cyclical and represent themselves, but based on the context at the time. In the 70s, Caesar is born out of a fear of nuclear annihilation and warfare. In the 2010s, he's born out of the greed of a giant pharmaceutical corporation. Kind of interesting. Another reason that I think this is super interesting is that the trilogy that's just come out, Rise of the Planet of the Apes, Dawn, and War, are not actually a prequel or a remake. They're kind of a retelling of even just this one movie, Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, which if you'll remember is the fourth movie in the original series. It's like that story just extended over a whole trilogy. But in some ways, it's also a retelling of the first movie, but with Caesar experiencing what Taylor did in the first movie, because Taylor was taken by the apes and imprisoned and experimented on, and that's exactly what happens to Caesar, but humans are doing it to him. Which again shines another light on the cyclical nature. It's always some group of people performing atrocities against another, but it's just flip-flopped and represented based on the time. So as we're watching this reboot series, the question is, what is that science fiction mirror showing us now? We already experienced Caesar's journey back in Conquest of the Planet of the Apes and Beneath the Planet of the Apes in 1970s. So what is Caesar's journey about this time in the 2010s? Really exciting about this is that now that we have another Planet of the Apes movie coming out, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, the question is again, how will all those themes, plot lines, storylines, these archetypes represent themselves with a mirror to our modern times? What's it going to be talking about? I don't know. I'm super excited to find out. I'd love to hear what you think Kingdom is going to be about, either before you see it or after you see it, what your take on it is. Like I said, I really do love the Planet of the Apes movies. I think they're kind of slept on. I think they're really great. And I would love to even do a deep dive into some of the other ones, particularly the first one. If you're interested in that, of course, let me know, and I'd be happy to talk more about it. Thanks.